Good morning. Here we are again, another day to give thanks to God for all his goodness to us. And we're looking today at Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31. And it's the story, well-known story, of the rich man and Lazarus. This is not the same Lazarus as the Lazarus in John 11, whom Jesus raised from the dead. That Lazarus was not a beggar, he was not poor, he lived with his two sisters. But this Lazarus was very poor, and he was covered in sores, and he would have wished to have something from the rich man's table. The rich man was very rich, and he feasted sumptuously every day. And he didn't share what he had with Lazarus, and they both died, and they end up in two places. One, the poor man with Abraham being comforted, and the rich man in Hades in torment. And Lazarus, I don't think, would have minded going and helping. He would have given him some water to soothe him, but there was a gulf set between them, and he couldn't do it. Abraham said he couldn't pass across the gulf, and so the rich man said, "Please send him to my brothers so that they can be warned." And Jesus has Abraham saying, if they didn't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't listen to someone who returns from the dead. And to understand it as a story, we need to realize that Jesus is telling it against the Pharisees of his day. Because in verse 14 it says, "The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all this, and they scoffed at him," at Jesus. And Jesus told this story to point out to them that they were missing something essential in their life, and that was compassion. Compassion for people around them. And we see it so often in the Gospels, don't we? How often on a Sunday or Sabbath, it's the Pharisees that are criticizing Jesus for healing someone who is in need on the Sabbath. They're more concerned about observing the law than about being compassionate and loving the people who are in need and helping them. And Jesus is pointing out to them that their love of prestige, their love of money, their love of position, their love of feasting, their pride in themselves, all of that was contributing to the fact that they would not inherit eternal life, and that they were lacking. And they had and knew very well Moses and the prophets. Moses and the prophets, whom Jesus could, and all of them, could summarize as having two main objectives: to teach people to love God with all their heart and soul and mind, and to love their neighbor as themselves. The whole law is about that. In the law, it's all about not reaping your field to the edge, but leaving a margin that the poor could take from, about looking after the stranger in your midst, and the widows and the fatherless. And the prophets, Terry and I were reading it only yesterday, the verse in Micah, which really sums up the prophets, Isaiah, Hosea, Joel, Micah. He says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" The prophets were all about how people were being mean to the poor, how people weren't having compassion for anybody, and that their sacrifices weren't worth anything if they had no compassion and they didn't care for people. And this is the main thought of this story. But there's some interesting sidelines, and the first one is that this life is the opportunity. This life is the time of opportunity. After we die, the opportunity is gone. There is no second opportunity to change the way we do things and to live differently and to turn to Jesus. Our opportunity is now, and we have the warnings of the Bible. We have more warnings than the people of Jesus' day. We have the New Testament. We have no excuse, those of us who live in a Christian country where the Bible is freely available to us. We have no excuse. We know what it says. And here it is. And it's very interesting, isn't it, that there are some parts of the church that believe there is an opportunity to sort things out after death, and they call it purgatory. There's no evidence for that really in the scriptures at all. But it is this feeling that God couldn't possibly not give you another chance. Don't believe that, because it doesn't tell it in the scriptures. It makes it quite clear. And it's very interesting thinking about this parable and thinking about the fact that Jesus, when he rose from the dead, he did not go to anyone who didn't already believe in him. There's one exception to that, and that is Saul, who became Paul. Jesus appeared to him, and Jesus has appeared to many people who haven't been of faith. But in the immediate aftermath of the resurrection, he only appeared to people who believed in him already. He did not appear to people who had rejected him. He didn't go to Caesar. He didn't go to Pilate. He didn't go to Ananias and Caiaphas. Annas and Caiaphas, the high priest. He didn't go to them. He didn't go to the people who had shouted for his death. He didn't appear in Jerusalem in the temple and show himself raised from the dead. Because without faith, it is impossible to believe, to please God, without faith. And when we come to him in faith. And the warnings are all there. And if we have eyes to see them, we should not ignore them. We should not ignore them, because they are warnings of dire consequences if we don't make that decision while we're here on this earth. Because as Abraham said to Lazarus, to the rich man, it's not that Lazarus didn't want to help. It was impossible for him to help. After we leave this world, it will be impossible for us to tell our families and our friends about Jesus. We won't be allowed to come back and tell them. We need to tell them while we have the opportunity. So have a think about this passage in Luke 16 today. Be blessed, have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.